Was thinking about doing a Q&A about my previous work on Clash Mini, and I asked Twitter community. Yeah, that's a thing, by the way. Twitter community is a thing. Apparently, at some point, Twitter had that kind of feature where like you could create a community, which kind of felt like more like forums or like a kind of closed discussion kind of thing. To be honest, I don't know what kind of feature it was supposed to be, but anyway, I asked the question. This question I asked on Twitter, and I got some interesting questions. Because I asked for questions, I got questions. So the first question, I'm curious about what you did when you finished announcing all of your, you had to announce, and whether if the Twitter, Discord, Threads, Reddit, or other social media platforms apart from reading feedback. So when the announcement happened and everything else, we still had a lot of work to do. The game wasn't about to be shut down like right away. We had to basically prepare for the servers to go down and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, a lot of us that are working on games are immediately thinking where our next passion is, and what kind of things we care about, what kind of things we love to do more of, and what we've learned from the previous work. And I think that was the most important thing that we could have done. And I think everybody in Supercell does that. Everybody tries to learn as much as possible from the work that we've done, and then apply that work for the next project or the next game that we're going to be working on. In my case, I was thinking, what kind of game do I love the most, and what kind of game I've played, what game have I played the most, and where my passion truly was at that moment. And the conclusion was Clash of Clans, because I played this game from basically the beginning. As I mentioned, I bought an iPad specifically to play Clash of Clans. And to be honest, I never used an iOS device before. I was an Android guy, so this is a whole new world only to get into Clash of Clans. And I really loved it. And I played with my girlfriend, and we had a lot of fun. And so, yeah, it's just ended being Clash of Clans. And I think at that moment, Clash of Clans really could use some help on just the workload, because it was very stressful at that moment. Like, they were preparing for Holland, and that was a lot of work to be done, and so I really got excited to work on this right away. Another question from Abdude. Why did you move to why didn't you move to Clash Royale, given the Clash Mini would be there and they needed a second community manager? Well, Clash Royale, Clash of Clans was in a similar position, and so I think again, it all boils down to like what kind of contribution and what kind of work are you passionate about, and what kind of like and what the team needs specifically, and so you'll find your own way of kind of figuring out where you can contribute the most with the most passion that you have. And organically, I pretty much just gravitated towards Clash of Clans, because I've been talking to Clash of Clans team for a very long time, and I think we also kind of vibed very, very easily, and it was very cool to just immediately be on the same page. Another question. Sorry, I keep doing this way. Why so many UI changes? And this kind of folds into this question as well. I'm very curious about the UI changes and to the game that feel more like toys. What is the main idea behind remodel and main UI, and thoughts behind? And basically, I think this all boils down. I got a lot of these kind of questions where like. UI, a lot of UI changes, a lot of art changes all the time. Like almost every update, it felt like a new change. And if you haven't noticed, the gameplay changed a lot as well. And I think that is the core of making a beta game and kind of testing it out and seeing what works and what doesn't. And if you don't make drastic changes and see how the people react to it and then like improve on that, I think you're doing it wrong. So I think constant evolution of the product that you're running. And in my case, for example, like Mini Minute began to be one thing at the beginning, but then ended up being something a little bit different, and then Small Talk series became something else, and all that kind of stuff. And we're constantly evolving what we're doing, and so like we wanted always to improve, and that was the mindset that we always had. Another part of this question was, though, was there more synergies thought about before the end? For example, I think flying units were a really popular idea for the community. Yeah, I mean, eventually we would have wanted to make flying units. At least the Baby Dragon was in the works, and obviously, I'm not sure if they would really be flying, like visually, but they would be definitely treated as such. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, what could have happened, and there's been a lot of content planned, but again, that's not really the point. I'm not going to be revealing here what could have happened because, again, that may be released, who knows, in some other form somewhere else. Another question. How did the change of not being able to move the minis during the game during games affect the game? Well, it made all the difference. I think this was the most important change we've done to the game. Without that, I think the game wouldn't be that much fun. And I think Fan, our game lead and game designer, was very much in favor to make the game more fun, and at all cost, and at cost of like making such a drastic change to the core game mechanic, and so far into the game development that like this is a first in my career where I see a game designer kind of like making such a drastic change and betting that the game is going to be better, that it paid off. Another one. How do you think the decision affect your career-wise? Would you say you'd be in a better position if CM made it and you were the community's face of it? Hard to say. I think so funny story. My very first game that I worked on in my whole career, was a game called Dust 514. And this game was on PlayStation 3. Was a PlayStation 3 exclusive game. It was a shooter game. And it came a little bit too late. And at that time, 2015, people didn't really care too much about like free-to-play shooters on consoles. Oh, the irony. And what ended up happening is that the game got killed, like within a few years after being launched. And I think that was one of the most valuable learnings. I think like killing a game does not necessarily make your reputation bad, or like doesn't make your career path worse. I think community management, at least, again, I'm just talking from my perspective because I don't know. Like community management is definitely something that's like, I think your achievements and things that you've done for the community in your career matter a lot, regardless of if the game got killed or if the game was a big success. Of course, if the game was a big success, you would have a bigger community and you would have to manage such a community at the same time as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that like you've done a bad job if the game got killed. Like think about it. Like did Clash Mini get killed because it had bad community? Not really. A bunch of games have bad communities and yet they go global in the whole gaming industry. Like that's not like the benchmark. And so I think like anything that happens to the game is a learning process for a community manager. And the community manager can do their best work regardless of the game's state. Of course, if the game does well, like it's a little bit easier. Your job is a little bit easier. But if the game doesn't do so well as well, like that is a challenge. And I see it as a challenge. And I think that's very exciting to take on as well and kind of like address the problems and kind of communicate. And yeah, it's just a balancing thing. So yeah. And funny thing is that like, before Supercell, I worked on PUBG Mobile, and that was a huge game and still like a massive game. So I have experience working on massive games as well, where like Discord server is like 500,000 people and something like that. So it's and both have pros and cons. So I think I don't really prefer like one or the other. I just like to learn more stuff, and this was my first Supercell game to work on, and that's very exciting. And now that I'm on Clash of Clans, it's a very different kind of game, and that's very exciting. And talking to that community is always like eye-opening every single day, because it's like I am learning the game at the same time on a high level, and it's like it's like I'm trying to like understand everything, and it takes a very long time. Another question. Hope it doesn't sound rude, but I want to know if you all had any plans from the start, because I remember we had tons of changes all direction, felt a lot of like adapting to popular opinion. I don't think it's bad, just want to know if you and the devs had a specific direction in mind. Of course, like the number one direction of this game from the beginning was to make the most accessible auto chess, auto battler kind of game, because Fan and the team took a look at this genre and realized that matches take forever, and the games are very complicated to understand, and the mechanics are very complex. And I personally played Dota Underlords for like a year when that game came out, and my biggest pet peeve about that game was that like every match would last me like 30 to 45 minutes, and I'm like, how is this a thing, especially for mobile? And I think on desktop you could make an argument that like the game was doing fine, because like desktop players are like the people that sit down and like dedicate a few hours of their game time, but on mobile just wasn't near close to like what mobile gameplay should have been. And so when I joined Supercell and I realized that they're making us like a much more accessible kind of game, I was so excited, because I was like, we are actually going to make the most accessible and the most approachable kind of game. And that is very exciting, because it is a big challenge. Like nobody has ever done that before, and so that's what the direction was. Of course, everything around it has kept changing, but as I mentioned, it changed for a reason. And final question, at least in this session, was there any ideas or new minis that were scrapped during development? If so, what were they? I'm not going to talk about minis, because there's too many that was scrapped and changed and all that stuff. But I clearly remember from the very early when I joined the team that the meta of the game, like the in-between matches, the lobby was very different. There was like a little kind of like a board of like world board. We called it racetrack at the beginning. Because it looked like a little racetrack, like where the cars would drive and stuff like that. And like after you finish a match, you would like almost like in a Monopoly, you would just move on the little tiles, and you would get like some kind of loot. And there was like this kind of like idea of like board game as kind of like a visual indication of your progression kind of thing. And that was very fascinating, but I think like that didn't work out too much because it was very confusing. Like people were thinking like this is the main game. And then like the whole, it was very complex in terms of like how does it evolve, and it was a lot of work, and I don't know, it's just like the whole thing felt a little bit kind of too elaborate for some people. And also, yeah, so that was a very interesting idea. But again, the game experimented with so many things that never shipped. And this was one of the biggest ones, at least that I remember. We also used to have some kind of keys, and those keys would correspond to like a type of mini they were, something like that. It was like basically along the lines of those synergies that we later released. And so there were attempts. There were definitely attempts in various directions, but it's, yeah, that's pretty much it. So anyway, thank you everyone for asking your questions on Twitter, on Twitter community. I didn't forget about you guys. Like I just like, you know, I saw it and I was like, you guys should probably deserve some answers as well. Thank you so much for joining me for this video, and let me know what kind of videos you want me to make in this channel, because I feel like Let's Plays are fun, but I think giving an occasional update on the game status is much better than just like constant gameplay. Let me know, like ask me more about the career, ask me more about the gaming industry and community management and all that kind of stuff, and I can answer basically anything. So yeah, drop your comments in this video comment section, and I will read it, and maybe that's gonna be the next video. Bye. Awkward. Bye.